All right. So, as I said, today's Google Club is kind of focusing on looking at what we consider the digital skills. We're going to be looking at a framework that has identified some skills under what they call online life. And we're going to think about how we can use some Google tools with a focus on, I think in the description it said Google Maps, Google Forms, and Google Arts and Culture. And we're going to add in Sheets. But you obviously can use any tools. They don't even have to be Google tools. So we're just doing this as a kind of lens to think about how we can bring practicing these digital skills into our instruction. Um, my name is Nell Eckersley, and I work at the Literacy Assistance Center. And I know I've met or been in the same Zoom space as many of you. So it's wonderful to see you here, and welcome to folks that are new. Google Club's been going on for probably, I think this is our fourth year. And every year there's sort of a focus, like a theme for the year. And the theme this year is digital resilience. So we're thinking about how we can use Google tools to help practice digital resilience for ourselves and for our learners. And digital resilience is that idea that we can't just teach explicit skills around digital literacy or digital skills because they change, right? So if I'm the teacher and I teach everybody how to log in to this particular website, next week that could change, right? The login could be on the other side. And what happens if people haven't learned resilience, haven't figured out how many times has this all happened to any of us? I have to say, last week I was joining a workshop where I was going to be talking, and I opened up my Zoom, and up came a message asking me if I wanted to update my Zoom. And I was like, I don't want to update my Zoom right before I'm going to be talking on my Zoom. Like, that's totally scary. Some people will never update, and that's also problematic, right? So you might be using a really out of date version, and you won't have all the things that are there. So digital resilience is this practicing of being adaptable, having resources to help you when you inevitably hit a sticky patch. It's about growth mindset, right? Being open to learning new things, trying it a different way. And because we're Google Club, we focus on Google tools, but there's nothing that says any of this has to be done through Google. But this is a great way for us to explore what Google Tools contains for us. And we like Google because it's something that everyone can access at no cost monetarily. Obviously, you are putting data into Google. Some people don't want to do that. That's totally fine. But it is a very for us to practice our digital skills, we can still be very careful and not put data into our Googly stuff that we don't want to share. But it does allow us to start work in a classroom and then have learners or us ourselves go home or go to a different computer and continue the same work without having to pay for Microsoft 365 or something like that. And we think the skills are transferable. So whatever we're doing with Google, we want to pay attention and be explicit about how maybe you would do that in Microsoft. Um, all right, that was a lot of preamble. So we'll get going. So then the title today is Optimizing Everyday Life, Google for Daily Tasks and Community Engagement. That title is now already old for me. So like I said, we're talking about online life, really is what we're talking about. This is funded by DYCD, and you hopefully all know that you can access DYCD Connect to find out about other trainings and other stuff coming from DYCD. So this is just a reminder of that. After today's session, you'll be able to identify digital skills related to online life and know where to go find them again if you're interested in working on those with your learners. And then we're going to spend a little bit of extra time on Google Arts and Culture because I'm guessing that's new for most of you, where you might be familiar with Google Maps and Google Sheets and Forms. But we also want to look at maps and forms and sheets with this particular lens, right? Like how can those tools particularly help us with these online skills that we're going to be talking about. So we do have a few more Google Clubs coming up. They happen on the third Wednesday. I think it's the third Wednesday. Third Wednesday of the month at 4 o'clock. And some of these are a little bit scheduled differently because of other things happening. So March, I think, falls on on the normal schedule, but April will be a little bit different. I think it's a week later. And then May will be our final one. And May is an opportunity for you. So the reason this is called Google Club versus Google Workshop number 6 is that it's supposed to be a club, right? We're all here. It's kind of late in the afternoon. It's shorter than most workshops, and it's really an opportunity for everyone to share. What we've found is that for lots of folks, this is all still very new. Maybe you're a little nervous, or you just, it's a little nicer just to come and hear or see things. But really, there is an opportunity for you to share what you have tried and it worked beautifully. You tried and it failed miserably. You tried two different things, and one was good and one wasn't so great. So be considering that as we get closer to the March date. I will send out a reminder, and I might come and tap you if I know some of the things that you're working on and see if you want to give us like a 5 or 10 minute overview of how you might have been using Google this year. So keep that in mind. Don't be shy. So our next meeting in March, we'll be looking at open educational resources and something called Grow with Google, where you can continue to get content outside of these meetings and other workshops that the LEC does. And then in April, we'll be looking at productivity, and that will have some stuff about Google Keep and some other tools that maybe you use or maybe you don't use. And then, like I said, the last one's our capstone. So fantastic. All right. So we're going to first look a little bit about at these online digital skills. So when we think about, I'm guessing for most of you, if you are including digital skill instruction in your classes, you're doing it in addition to whatever you originally taught. So if there's anyone here who's lucky enough or unlucky enough to teach just digital skills, let us know that. Put it in the chat. But most people in adult ed at this point, there's very little funding. Programs have to find their own funding very specifically to offer standalone digital literacy classes. So the majority of programs in New York City are going to be offering digital literacy kind of embedded into existing content, ESL class, GED class, ABE class, whatever it is. And that's a lot of extra work for you as a teacher. And it doesn't, you may not have had any training in this, or you don't really know what skills we're talking about or whatever it is. So we're going to be talking a little bit about where you can find out about lists of skills that you might want to think about. And then, like I said, we're going to look at these, I guess they're really 4 different tools. And we're going to think about how, when you see the list of these online life skills, I think things are going to pop out immediately about how you could use some of these tools, but some things might be a little deeper. So we're going to spend a little time, you guys helping me brainstorm ways we can imagine using these tools. And maybe you're doing it already. So that's very exciting. So we have online life, digital skills we're going to look at. Then I'll take you through a couple of examples or some things about Google Maps that maybe you don't know about, and then forms and sheets. Again, I don't have that much, but we'll look at some of the templates that exist there, and then we'll go a little deeper into the arts and culture tool. So this is our online life. I'm going to go ahead and make this big. So there are lots of different frameworks and lists of skills out there, and I have in the past used the North Star standards, which I really like. But in this particular one, we're looking at the Seattle Digital Equity Initiative Skills Framework, and they took frameworks, I think maybe 7 or 8 different ones, international ones, and they kind of mushed it all together, and they created this framework that has 10 different buckets, 10 different domains. They cross over each other totally. But in this case, today we're looking at their bucket that they called online life. And the idea with this is that, you know, we're all online. Most of us, I think, are all online, and we do things online, right? Oops, let me go back a step. We pay bills online. We order things online. We look up things to find out how to get to them or what their hours are, right? So we spend a lot of time online just for our own personal needs in a moment that we need to do that. So that's kind of what we're looking at here. So you can see they've listed 11 of these online life um, skills, buckets of skills, I'll call them. What I really like about the North Star, and I'll add North Star as a resource at the end. I know we've talked about it before, so many of you might be familiar, but North Star is very explicit in how they list the skills. So it sort of like knows how to download an app. And I like that. If I was teaching, I would be very happy to have a list that was so explicit in like what exactly should I be making sure that we've covered and that people are comfortable doing. This is a little vaguer, and I think it works well for today. So the first one is find services. So we have access and use social consumer services, housing, childcare, health, mental health, consumer, legal. How did people find your class, right? Was that an online thing that they could find you online? They could locate you and come to see you. They maybe could look at your hours on your website. Um, and we know that now a lot of government resources and services are only online. It's very hard to find them. You have to start there. So that's definitely a very large set of skills underneath, right? So those are specific, but we're talking about Google searches. We're talking about Google Maps, I think that could come in very handy there. So we can look at the second one. We have access community resources, which is very related, right? So accessing community resources, which really is your program probably, finding the library, looking up schools, or alternate site parking, right? Like these are all things that might need at any moment. Um, Three is use tech responsibly, right? So there's being aware of its impact on environment, on society, um, and maybe we could connect that with shopping online and being safe in our own ways about when we are shopping online and what kinds of information and when we trust something that's available online. I don't know if any of you have done it, but I have bought things online that didn't exist. And if I had sat back and thought about it, I probably would have been like, well, that's very inexpensive for that thing. And then it just never showed up. I ordered a bag from Le Sports Sac, and it was very inexpensive compared to a regular Le Sports bag. And I ordered it on my phone, and I took a screenshot of the order, and then I never got any kind of confirmation, and I kind of just hung out for a couple weeks, and still nothing had happened. So finally, I contacted them because the Sports Sack. I mean, they're a reputable company, and I can go find their contact us button or whatever, and I contacted them, and they're like, no, no, we have no order that came from you, and I could send them the screenshot, and they were very happy because the screenshot showed that the website that I'd ordered it from was lesportsac.us, I think it was. And they're like, that's not our, someone else had used that and pretended to be selling their product, and they could track that because I'd made that screenshot, and they were really nice and they sent me a bag anyway. So it was a very good ending. But the point with that was that if I had taken a step back and been thoughtful about it, there's just a real reality, right? Of like that couldn't have been what that bag should have cost. So we have shopping online, we have understanding copyright. That comes up a lot when we're making resources. Maybe that's more important for us in our teaching lives, but it comes up when you're working in anything you're doing. And our learners might have businesses and they're making websites, and they have to be careful not to use copyrighted images to illustrate their websites, etc. Being a good online citizen, so engaging in civic life and society online, meaning being responsible. So you're not adding to the chaos out there by sharing information that maybe isn't accurate. Being thoughtful about that. Managing money online. So we know some folks don't even have bank accounts. And if they do have a bank account, they might not feel very comfortable looking at the app on their phone to track their money. And we're not saying that they have to do that, but they should know how it works, and then they can make their choices to not do it or do it as they wish to. Accessing online entertainment. I mean, I'm guessing almost everyone at this point does some level of streaming or watches YouTube, and maybe this is a little old-fashioned. I mean, I think we still talk about, I'm just remembering kind of like Napster and stuff like that, but maybe it's still an issue that people are downloading illegally shared videos, books, and games. Using transportation tools. So transportation, especially, I mean, I think in a big city like New York City, where public transportation is a very big part of our lives, knowing how to find where your transportation is and if it's running properly and how you get from point A to point B, very useful. Saving and managing content. And this is a big one, especially if we're thinking about um, maybe people's functional skills with their phones. So, as I mentioned, I did take a screenshot of that order. That's kind of a rule I made for myself. So, that's not a bad rule to have, right? Like, it kind of backs you up a little bit. But do you know where that screenshot went? Can you get back to it? I may have told you this story before, but I was in the airport waiting for my flight, and a man came over and sat down beside me or near me, and I couldn't help but overhear. He had missed his flight. He was on his phone. He had missed his flight because he had taken a screenshot of his boarding pass. So he had had the boarding pass on his phone, but somehow he couldn't find that. He had made a screenshot of it. He couldn't find that either. So he got stuck in the security line and could get through until his flight had already left. And we all know, I think probably, that we've had moments where we can't find the thing, right? We took a picture of it, we downloaded it, we kind of think we know where it is, but then when we try to find it, we can't, or that particular app disappeared or isn't where we think it should be, or we can't remember the name of it. So those are all things that we need to develop some skills around for ourselves so that we feel safe there, that we feel knowledgeable and we have some ways to help ourselves get back to that content. When we talk about digital resilience, often I think of it as a foundational component. So if you don't know where your stuff is, that already sets you up to feel very vulnerable. So the very base foundational set of digital skills are knowing where your stuff is and getting back to it and having some systems. I'm someone who has very kind of relatively rigid systems for how I name my files and my folders. Other people just search, totally fine, right? You know what the keywords are, but having some systems for that and having some backups and knowing that those are good backups. Like I've seen folks who can't find their Google stuff because they just kind of let it sit in the shared with me area of their drive, and that gets very mushed down very quickly because it's chronological, right? So as someone shares something with you, it comes to the top. But then if someone else shares something with you, that stuff starts to move down that list. So knowing how to make a shortcut or, other ways to handle being able to come back to materials that you have saved or created that you want to get back to. So we have a lot of, oh, and I don't think I did access help features, which it's funny how often we don't take advantage of those, but there's little question marks sometimes. You can just scroll over that. It'll tell you more. Typing in to the help box or the search box in some tools will tell you how to do something. I find that with Google Sheets really helpful. So I don't have to know everything all the time, but I can know that it exists and I can search for it and use help features to do that. Okay, so these are our 11 skills that we're particularly looking at, these 11 buckets of skills. And I'm going to talk now a little bit about Google Maps and then Sheets and Forms and then Google Culture and Arts and Culture. And we're going to think about, so while we're talking about that, or while I'm talking a little bit about that, think about how you think, like if there's something that really pops out to you from these skills that you think would be particularly valuable to your particular set of learners or coworkers or whatever. And then let's think about how these particular tools could help with that, or maybe we need to reach out to some other tool. But we're going to try and come up with a few examples by the end of the session today of how we can work on these skills using these tools or other tools as you suggest them to us. So we have Google Maps. I'm gonna guess there's no one here who's never used Google Maps. Is there anyone here who's never used Google Maps? Raise your hand. Um, Kind of like YouTube. I feel like Maps and YouTube are probably the very lowest, very thinnest edge of the wedge. You don't have to know that you don't even have to have a Google account, right, to use these, both YouTube and Google Maps. We can use those without logging in. If you do log in to your Google account or you're logged into Chrome and you pull up your map, I have an Android phone also, so it's all googly. Then it can save your searches. And there's a lot of other resources that can come from that. So I'm going to go ahead and click on my maps.google.com. Does anyone here use maps with their learners, or have you done projects where learners have used maps? Don't be shy. All right. So if we're looking at, let me move this out of the way.
I once for a class trip, I kind of and I sent them the directions through Remind. I sent them a link to that, and I showed a picture of it. But that was the extent that I went to, like trying to show them, and a lot of them knew the Google Maps.
That's what I was going to ask. So I think it's something, again, as much as we all use it, I think a lot of folks, a lot of learners are using it because it's the way we get around, right? And we can see if you're looking at it on a phone, it looks a little different. But if we're looking here, obviously I'm in this area right now, so I'm in my office, so you're seeing kind of where I'm located. And I can type in my search. I could say a place I want to go and it will help me find that place. But we also have these things that are built in, right? So restaurants, hotels, things to do, museums, transit, pharmacy, ATMs. This is not as easy to find on the phone, but I think if you do three dots or three lines, you'll find these options. Transit might be really handy, right? Like you can see where the nearest subway stop or bus stops are. Um, and then down the side here, we have our three lines. So we have the sidebar, we have saved, recents, your contributions. What is your contributions, do you think? Has anyone made any contributions?
Are those for reviews, or if we don't like, if they say, "Did you like this particular route?" Yes, no. Is it one of those questions?
Yeah, I think it's going to come up in all those situations. So any place that you've given some feedback, right? So it could be a review about a restaurant. It could be was this route useful to you? Yes or no? That might show up there, but I think primarily they're looking at the review pieces. Sorry to the folks who just joined me. I don't think I saw that you'd all been waiting in the waiting room. So welcome. Well, we are recording today, so you'll be able to see what you missed, but we're really just digging into it now. So what we're doing is we're looking at how we're looking at Google Maps right now, how that can be used in lessons to work on online life. So we're kind of just doing a little tour of what Maps includes. So we were just saying that your contributions, if you're someone who writes reviews, I've written a few reviews. Let's see what we can have here. Look at that. I got a lot of points. They're very into trying to gamify everything, right? So I don't really care about that. I do get emails telling me that I'm like the most amazing review writer. I've written like five, whatever. So they're really trying to get you involved. So we have contribute, we have reviews, we have photos that you might have put in there. If you've edited some content that somebody else um, had put up there and you found some mistakes maybe. And then, you'll get asked questions like, is this restaurant good for vegetarians? So this is where this stuff would come from too. Again, you don't have to do any of this, but if you are doing it, you might want to come and check and make sure that you feel like this is accurate. You might want to delete it all, right? You don't want any of this out in the world. Yeah, look at that. Local guide 5 on level 5. Very fancy. Okay, so we said that we had our contributions. We have location sharing. I very rarely am sharing my location, but like I think parents and children do that, or maybe uh, spouses or whatever. There are times when that's very helpful to say, "This is where I am. Come find me. Come meet me here." Timeline, your data and maps. I don't even know what that looks like. Let's see. Oh, so these are things I looked up today, right? My home address is there. So there's a lot of information. I might want to look at that and maybe I want to get rid of some of it or I need to update some of it. So knowing how your map stuff is out there, I have purposely told my phone not to say where I am. So no, it's not true. My phone, I think when I'm open the app, it can do it, but it's not supposed to be tracking me otherwise. I don't know that that's true or not. Um, Share or embed a map. So if you guys have a website and you want to have a little map that shows where your agency is, you can grab a link from here for your specific kind of little area near your location. You can add a business. Now, this is actually really important. So if you have students who maybe have their own businesses, um, oops. Are we okay? I think we're okay. Good. Um, then you can add your own business there. And it's sitting there waiting for you. So if you don't do it, then when people come there, it just feels like they won't know what times you're open or whatever. And it doesn't always work. Like the Literacy Assistance Center, we did put our stuff in here, but we're not really open to the public. So having our hours and things is kind of silly. But we need to be there, right? If you're going to Google us, it's helpful for you that we're there. So there's a lot more stuff in here to search. People maybe are changing this to a different language when they're using it. They might be using it in their home language. And you can look at your history and your search settings. So to me, there's a lot, but like I was talking to one of my colleagues who does math instruction, and she would do some lessons here about like the distance versus time, or how different is it if you take the subway and drive or walk, and why is that different, and what are the different routes that it might make you go on. So those are some ways you could even use it for math. And by doing that, you're practicing the skill of putting in your search. And let me get rid of this because I think it's making my very slow. Um, what I want to show you is another tool that's related called mymaps.google.com. Now, we haven't mentioned this, but in general, with Google tools, you'll see that you can get to almost every tool if you know the name of the tool. So here we had maps.google.com. So we've talked about that before with docs.google.com, mail.google.com, contacts.google.com. So that's a kind of general rule. I have never met a situation where that's not true, but sometimes like with mail, it's not Gmail, it's mail.google.com. So you have to know the name of the file type. So we have maps.google.com, but we also have something called mymaps.google.com. And mymaps is using their map stuff, but you get to put stuff on the map. So you'll see here, I have several vacations where I've used this to identify maybe where I'm going to stay and then the closest place to get really good croissants or whatever it is, museums I want to go to. And to do this, you just click on create. So I am logged in. So I'm logged into Chrome and I'm logged into my Google everything. So when I open this up, I can tell because my little face is there or your initial is there. So we're going to click on create a new map. Um, and you just start putting in the things you want to put on there, right? So maybe you want to find all the places that have Dominican food in a neighborhood or um, important places in your neighborhood in general, right? Like the library and the school and whatever. And you can search for them in here, right? So if I want to say, I want to narrow this down, I'm going to come into the New York City area. Let me, there we go. And I want to find yarn stores or libraries. Let's look up libraries. So library, that's very vague. So I might need to say lower Manhattan. I think that look and see what this does. So, it's the public theater. That's not at all what I wanted. So we'll have to do. We have to hone our searches, right? So we can find the things we want. But I'm gonna, for the sake of time right now, say that this is actually what I want to click on. So museums and theaters in my neighborhood. So if this is something I want to put into my map, I say add to my map. I can change the color of my little pointer, but I can also give it a different icon. So we could say that this should be something to do with theater. I'm going to say music. Why not? And I'm going to click OK. So now that has that little icon. And over here, as I build this, you're going to see all of the places that I add. I also can do it as layers. So maybe I'm going to have a layer that is all theaters and a layer that's all restaurants, or a layer that is things for children and a layer of things that adults want to do in their neighborhood, or however you want to do that, right? So you would label this layer theater, and then you can add a new layer that's called restaurants. Maybe let me do it. There we go, restaurants. And you just have to make sure which one, if you have both of these clicked, the new place will go into both, or you'll see both here. So I'm going to get rid of that one and I'm going to put in saffron thread. And you can make sure that it's what you want it to be. You see, it actually has information here, right? So even the website is there, phone number's there. You could look at it on Google Maps. Um, Yeah, reviews are there if you want them. So we're going to add it to the map. We're going to give it a different color. And we're going to give it a knife and fork symbol. So now, when we have both of these clicked, both of these items will show up on my map. If I scroll out, we should see both the theater. Yeah, so here we have um, the public theater, and here we have our restaurant. So again, this could be something that you do with your students where they all work in a map together. It could be a project where small groups do it or an individual does it, and then they share and explain. But it helps them locate themselves. It helps them identify the things that they're interested in. When you're looking at this map, you could just click on that and say add to map. So the way I was doing it was under the searching up here. You can also, a lot of stuff is already here, and you could just click on that and add it. And we can give it a name. And then you share it. So anyone with the link can view it. Let others search for it and find the map on the internet. So you can make this public, something that other people could find, or you can not do that, but you could still have a link for it. And this would be the link. So now if I give you this link, um, you'll be able to come and I'm going to put it in the chat in case you want to click on it, but I'll add it to our slides. Let me do that right now. Anybody have tried out my maps and have any thoughts about struggles or ways that it worked really well for you? Oh, you're also shy. It's okay. If you do have something you want to share, you can also put it in the chat. Um,
Um,
okay. Yes.
Besides getting me where I need to go, I mean, that's like the main reason I usually use it. I love hearing you have arrived. That's like my favorite.
I love that too. So yes, I mean, I think that's those are the basic skills that we want everyone to have. So this My Maps business is a little different. If we're going back to look at our online life ideas here. Can you see any online life skills that particularly connect either with My Maps or just regular Google Maps? Anything stand out to you? And you can put it in the chat or you can unmute anybody who wants to answer.
Maybe find services because the Google reviews. I mean, if I
Yes, I agree, right? So we have up here, I think find services and access community resources. What I do often on my phone is I pull up Google Maps, I type in the name of the restaurant, and I find out what time they're open, right? Or their phone number or all this other information, not just about the map, but it's a way to actually get usually a little overview of that business. So I think
price
that could be really great. Yeah,
price range and parking, all of that.
exactly, exactly. So that's restaurants. And again, other services, right? The library, the post office, all those things you can find. Um, post offices are open at very different hours and in different stations. So I often look post offices in my neighborhood to find out which ones are open, like at 2 o'clock on a Saturday or something like that. So I think using maps on our phones that way, where you type in the name of a business or type of business and you find the locations and then you can click on them. But knowing that, right, that you can tap on the business and then some extra information pops up. So yes, definitely finding services, accessing community resources. I'd say this use transportation tools, right? You, there are other transportation tools. MTA has its own website for some, like for LIR, the LIRR, and you can. I use that website to look up where my bus is on the line. But I think maps can be very. That's kind of where I start, right? Like where, how do I get from here to there? And it gives me a few different options. How do we decide which option? What's more important to me? Do I want to stay on the same train for longer, or do I want to do a shorter route, but I have to change trains? Like we have different reasons for doing these things. So having that conversation and thinking that through. If, some people are driving, so they would use this also for driving, and usually it gives you a couple different routes to choose between, and why would you choose one or the other, or why is the route that's on the highway my maps always tell me about the highway, and I'm like, I kind of like to go on the non-highway, and I have to tell it to turn off highways. So you can do that. You can tell it to not use highways. So knowing that, right? Knowing that you can go into maps and make them more explicit to what you want to see there. So keep thinking about that, right? There are other ways. I think you could do kind of a more convoluted lesson that has a map component to it and still gets to some of these other pieces. Even the shopping online, maybe. All right, so that was maps, very quick. And I know we're already running out of time. So anyway, that was quick though. So forms and sheets, really all I'm going to show you here are that there are templates, right? So if you wanted to, uh, if we're looking back here, um, again, I don't necessarily want to tell my students that they need to get a app for their bank, but we might want to talk about how you could use something like Sheets to track your expenditures, to make a budget for a special event. And so thinking about how we manage our money, creating activities around that, I think you could use Sheets for that. And then forms are interesting because a lot of these things do require you to fill out forms, right? So if you are accessing community resources, you might get to a website that asks you to fill out a form in order to get on the waiting list or to figure out, so they can know what you want to get from them. So understanding how to move around inside a form. And for some people, that's going to be something they've done a lot and it'll be very easy. But for some people, that's a very new thing. And moving, knowing how to progress through a form takes practice and can be done on a phone. So it's certainly something where I would say using a spreadsheet to track a budget, I would not do on my phone. So if your learners are mostly using their phones, maybe using a form just different kinds of forms, like a pretend medical form or pretend application for something. Make sure people are reading the directions. So you can put in some tricky directions in your forms so that people realize that that's really important. I mean, I'm very guilty of not, of thinking I know how to move through something very easily and then not getting where I want to go and having to come back and read and be like, oh, I have to click on that thing. Nice. So I see some people put some stuff in the chat, right? So we have comparing prices. This is going back to the bank thing, or sorry, going back to the map thing. And Pietro mentions using medical clinic that provides services to the community, right? So you're finding the medical establishment, and then we can have a pretend medical form that doesn't ask anything private, but just, you know, if you tell someone that they need to tell you their date of birth, they don't have to use their actual date of birth, but they need to know that usually it's going to be two digits, and four digits. And they need to look at that because if you get off, if you only do one digit for your month, then part of your day is going to go in your month and it gets very goofy. So practicing things like that are really great skills to do using these tools. So if you come to both of these, they both sheets and forms, there are templates. Forms both also have a lot of AI in them now. So you can you could open up a form and just say what you want the form to be about, and it will create a version of something, and then you can tell it, no, no, I need 5 questions and I want them to be multiple choice. I want a pretend medical form that doesn't ask for any private information, right? You could do that. Or what the directions are that you want to have that are very explicit. So you can get to the templates for both of these things, and this kind of goes back to what I was saying about maps.google.com. Here we have sheets.google.com and forms.google.com. So if I go here and I type in sheets.google.com, this will show me all the sheets I've ever created, right? So if I was to go to my drive, everything's mixed up. So my folders are there. I have a lot of folders, all my docs of different kinds, sheets, docs, forms. So this sometimes is very hard to maneuver. Like I'm like, oh, I made a form. It was really great. I can't remember the name of it. I can't find it. It's not in the folder I thought it was in. Then one thing that can sometimes help is to go to forms.google.com and you'll see all the forms you've ever created. But again, at the top, for both sheets and forms and docs and everything else, you start off with this template gallery. So you can come here and see all the templates that they have already created for you. This is stuff that comes from Google. You can see these also in the drive when you go to new and you scroll over here, you can say from template. And you'll also see that list of templates or those all the templates that are available. So there's at least two different ways to get there. So one is in the drive under new, just go click on that little sideways arrow, and then you can get to these templates. If you're working, maybe your job has Google Workspace, you can actually create templates and get them added in here, but only if you have Workspace. Yes, Christina.
I don't know if maybe you can help me. I'm looking at mine right now as we speak, and I have an issue of trying to delete. Some of them I can delete. I do the three little dots, and it says, you can remove. But then there's another one that it doesn't say that. It gives me options like to print, add, report, not helpful. How can I delete
So
one of?
you're looking at all your forms, for example, and you want to come in here and delete some.
Yeah, but
Okay.
on my phone though, that's the only thing.
So
It's
the
on my
phone might make it a little trickier. So the other thing is whether you were the one who created it or not.
right.
So usually with forms, you're only going to see the ones that you've created. You may need to do the cleaning up inside on the website. I haven't done it on my phone. Let me see if I can pull it up on my phone and do that. Are you going through your drive or are you going through the app for the particular tool?
I went into the drive, like the picture that you had, looks like a triangle. That's how
Yes.
I went through that.
Okay. So another thing to know with Google is on the phone, you can have Google Drive, and that will let you see all the stuff you've created. But if you actually wanted to create something, it usually will ask you to open the app for that specific tool type. And it might be that you have to go there to delete some of this stuff.
Okay. Yeah, because it seems it's like not what it's something that I downloaded from somewhere else.
That's interesting. You should still be able to, you should still be able to get rid of it. But one of the things to know here is if I create something and I share it with you and then I delete it, it's going to sit in my trash for 30 days unless I double delete it, which I can do straight away if I'm really smart and good. But while it's in my trash can, the other person can still pull it out.
Mm,
And then they can make a copy and then they have a version of it. And that might not be good or bad, but just so you know that just because you put it in the trash until it's actually deleted from the trash, it's still available to whoever you shared it with
okay.
originally.
Thank you.
But yeah, I'll try on my phone and I'll put some notes in our slides if I find that there's something very specific about that.
Okay. Thank you
Um,
so much.
and this is great. I really appreciate that you brought it up because phones are different than what you see on the screen. And I didn't play around with a lot of this stuff like my maps. I've never done my maps on my phone. I've looked at it on my phone, but I've never created it there. So I usually, a lot of creation, if I can, I want to do on a screen, a bigger screen with a keyboard and a mouse. And then to what I say, consume it, I am very happy to do on my phone.
Okay.
All right.
Thank.
So you see that there are lots of templates.
Yeah.
And again, you can add templates if you're part of a workspace. This is my private account, my personal account, which is a Gmail. But like I have my LAC email is associated with a workspace account, and I could ask our admin to add templates. So if there's something you use a lot, you could make a template of it, and then you can always just download that over and over again and use it over and over again. Okay, I'm going to let go of both of those. So again, if we quickly go back and look at our list of online life. So I had an activity here. I don't know how many of you have used Padlet Sandbox. I'm not going to take the time to do it because we're obviously running out of time. But you have a link to this, and if you want to come in and play with it later, you can. So the idea with this was that, for example, we could have broken into breakout rooms, and you guys could have thought together about what it is you would like, how you can imagine using these tools to practice these skills or introduce these skills. And then you could add them here by clicking on the little post-it note and putting them in here beside whatever. So this was Google Maps. This one is Google Forms and Sheets, and then this one is our Google Arts and Culture. But like I said, I'm not going to use it, but it's in our slides, so you can come play with it if you want to. So we've looked at maps. We've talked a little bit about Google Forms and Sheets. If we come back here, we've said that we think maybe forms could be used to practice some of this accessing community resources. Maybe Sheets could be used to manage money online. Um, and you could obviously make quizzes over any of this content in Google Forms. So those are some ways I can imagine doing those things. Um, so now we're getting to Google Arts and Culture. Has anyone here used it? Does anyone know Google Arts and Culture? So if you're using your phone, you can scan that QR code if you want to. This is one that's, I think, really interesting to see on a phone because it's built to really work on a phone. When you're looking at it on a computer screen, it might seem like it would be very hard to use it on small screens, but they've done a really great job of having it change layout and work slightly differently when you're on a phone. So Google Arts and Culture is a artsandculture.google.com, following our usual rule, right? So artsandculture.google.com. Um, it has, I think it's using over 2,000 different data points, like it's getting data from lots of different spaces. Um, And the way I'm just going to go ahead. So it's divided into different kinds of content. There are collections, so you could go to a museum that exists in the world, and they might have a collection here, and you could see a lot of the art in that collection. You can go on a virtual tour of a town or a location somewhere. Themes are broader, so like African. or Black History Month could be a theme, and there might be several different collections or tours or other kinds of content built into that. So it's coming from uh, multiple sources, historical events, historical figures, games. You can do a 360 video, and they do have a lot of lesson plans. And some reasons to think about using Google Arts and Culture is that it does give you this access, right, to the whole world. Um, Depending on how you use it with your learners, it can really foster critical thinking where we do some comparisons or we find the connections between things that might seem very not connected. Um, it covers so many different kinds of content. So it did obviously start, I think, with art and music, but now it has science, it has math, it has all of these other content areas, but connecting them with art and with music and with world events. History is in there as well. Um, the content is in a variety of different ways. So there's video, there's reading, there's listening. So you're working with all the different ways that people might learn best, and they can help choose and pick the ways that work best for them. And that this is a it's huge, but it is a curated space. So this is all reliable, curated information. There is a lot of AI in the game playing part, but otherwise, this is all real stuff. So you feel like this is a place you can trust. So let's just go to it. So again, you don't even have to log in. I'm logged in because I'm logged into Chrome. And when you first get here, we have home, explore, play, nearby, favorites, the lab. And then we have a lot of stuff down the side, right? So we have home, explore, play, nearby, profile. So this is a replication of what we have up top. We have achievements. I have to show off my achievements. So you literally go and do something and it will give you a badge. So your learners can do that. You can do that to kind of track what you've tried out. If we see we have collections and themes, as I mentioned, a collection is from a single source, like a museum, and themes would be from multiple sources. So let's go look at some collections. So you could decide, maybe you're even doing a class trip, and before you do the class trip, you come here and you look up the Met and find what art is there. Or you could combine this maybe with my maps, and people could pick three museums and then put them on the my map and talk, write up something about why they chose those three museums or why they would like to go to those three museums particularly. So if we click on this one, you get a little overview. You can follow it, which means that that information will kind of continue to show up in your feed. You can read stories, which are usually some writing, some video, some images. You could have a virtual visit where you walk through the museum and you can find out what's going on right now. Down here, we have images that are coming from the museum. It looks like there's a lot. And you can organize them by different formats, right? So created by, so this would be the artist, right? So there's only one Vasily Kandinsky, so we see that one painting there. Um, and then the color piece, oh, that's interesting. So that's just that. You can view things by color. Like one of the ways you can come in here is look for everything that's red. Um, Let's go back to our here. So we had our created by, we had designed by, fashion house, what what medium it's in, art movement. So again, it might not be that you are able to spend this much time or go this deep into this art piece, but you could have a single painting, or you could ask people to pick an image and then write about it or talk about why they find it uh, inspiring or interesting or something that they would like to look at more. Um, so that was under our collections, and collections aren't just museums. I think you can also, let's see, what other kinds of, well, maybe it's mostly museums. So again, it's a single source. If we go to the themes, you'll see that you get on a topic, you'll have multiple resources or different collections. So I was particularly interested in coming down, down, down. There was one on Black History and Culture, right? So this is Black History Month. So if we come in here, again, this is a theme. So there's a lot of different options here. And again, you could let folks just come in here and play around and tell you what they found useful, or you could get more specific and ask people to come to 5 sites of resistance. And again, they could put it on their maps, but no, I'm not really suggesting that. So as you scroll down, there's a little bit to read. Goes along with the image. It tells you where the image is. And some of them will have audio. There'll be a bit of a YouTube video in the clip. So you could choose one of these, or you could ask students to select two things and make, compare and contrast or talk about why they are similar or different. Um, right, if we go to, and then we have places. So someone maybe wants to talk about their hometown or their home country, and they could come here and find that country. Probably, it seems like a lot of them are listed here, and you know, pull 3 images that they really want to share and talk about why those are important to them or what that means to them. Um, so there are a number of resources to help you. They actually have a teacher guide, which takes you through some lesson plan ideas. Let's see if I kept that up here. I think it's this one. Yeah. So it's long, 52 pages, um, but it gives you some very step by step. Like I feel, for me, it feels very overwhelming when I've come in here and I haven't really had an opportunity to use it. It hasn't really shown me, I haven't figured out a way to use it in my professional development workshops with teachers. I think it could be its own workshop just on how to do this, how to use this. But if it's something is jumping out at you, maybe you've been trying to include some of this kind of content in your classes, and now you're like, oh, I could come here and find images or find uh, a story that would illustrate something that we've been talking about in class. Again, the reading level is pretty high. It's not always the best for ESL, but I think the images could be used very easily with ESL students of all levels. So as you come through here, it'll take you, and you can click on the quick start guide. They even have some zoomable works of art where you can go in really close. Um, so a lot of like moving around inside this document. When you click on these links, it'll take you to different sections of this document. Um, you can access it on your phone through the browser, but there is an app. So if it's something you end up using a lot, the app might be something students might want to download. What else is in here? Yeah, so it tells you how to share a link with students. So if you just want to share this particular image, you would grab the link and share that with them, and then we could all look at that together, or they could look at it for homework. These are the achievements, as I mentioned. Getting started. Uh, yeah, there's a lot. So going back to our original idea of how could we use these things to practice developing online life skills. Does anyone have any places they think this could particularly connect with?
Maybe access community resources, like going to the library, finding the art, and then going there, and
I
then going.
love that. Yes.
Maybe, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I love that. So, if you live in you're relatively new to New York City, or maybe you haven't, uh, gone to lots of museums or certain neighborhoods or whatever, I think this could be a really interesting way to get a first sense of it. So you could go and look for that museum or that location and see if it's something you can explore. I see Anna mentions copyrights, right? This is very good conversation. The content that we're looking there, you certainly could talk a little bit about how copyrights work in the United States and how you can participate looking at these images, but maybe not downloading them and putting them up in your own materials, or maybe they're in the public domain, and maybe you can do that. So I definitely think it could be used that way. I would also say accessing online entertainment. Again, ultimately we want to come out in the world and go to the actual museum, and we do live in New York City where we have a lot of these museums, but there are some museums we don't have here that you could go see. There are, um, I went through one session and it really took me through. There was a painting and it would zoom in and look at little elements of the painting and kind of ask questions or tell me what the artist tends to put rodents in when there's something bad happening in the painting or whatever. And that was really interesting. And when I was looking at some of the resources that were out there about how teachers have been using this, even just the comparing and contrasting, right? So you could have two artists from the same time period, but maybe from different countries, or you could have, so there's a lot of work there, I think, that you could do. Um, that's not so much about online life, but just general skills. Like this is the content, fitting into the content that you're covering in class, but giving them a new way to access things. So I see a lot of artist bios are examples of bad money management. So yes, examples of people. I mean, that's actually kind of an intense story, right? Like how many artists while they were alive did not have any money, and then sadly after they died, their art became much more valuable. So a conversation certainly could come from that too. Let's see here. And again, we can combine these things, but I, I would say with arts and culture that part of it is you going in and playing with it and feeling like, okay, in my teaching, I usually do this. I usually have an image that we talk about, and now I know I can come here to get images, or we didn't look at the games. I tried a game, and I found it very confusing. So I want to do it more than one time. So if you want to try out games, you need to try them out. Um, But, if you're standing at a bus stop and you have the choice of coming here on your app for the arts and culture, and you could be looking at art from museums, maybe that's a nicer thing to be doing than doom scrolling or doing something else. So it can just be a resource to let learners know about so they can access content that isn't something they get to look at often otherwise. Yes, like Rembrandt. I like that you guys have good references here. All right. So are there other questions or thoughts about any of these things? So eh, what I'm giving you here is a link to the teacher guide that I just showed you that's super long. Um, they also have some training. They have this is a YouTube video. This was an example. Let's see. I don't think I went this deep with you guys. Right. So this is the whole, I did take you here and then we didn't go into any specific things. So you could come down here and choose one of these activities. And I think this was where I found the painting. Maybe I won't be able to find it. Anyway, you can see there's a lot of really intense images just alone to do the images. But then you could do an actual walk across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, right? So if we click on that, here you are on the bridge. This was the March. Um, so anyway, to me, there are some really interesting, I haven't put it all together, but I feel like there's some really interesting ways to have access to stuff that's not in the classroom, but bringing it in the classroom and then thinking about how that could be used as a way to practice those online skills. Okay. So as I mentioned, we have a Padlet sandbox. I'm not expecting you to go do it, but uh, because this is Google, we don't talk about Padlet very much, but I will be doing a workshop on Padlet, and Padlet does have some really amazing it gives you some amazing options for having people share together but not be able to mess with each other's stuff. So one of the things that happens often with Google, we can all be in a Google Doc together or all be in a Google Slides deck together, but people have to be very careful not to mess with each other's stuff. And what Padlet does is let us be there together but not mess with each other's stuff. So it can be very rich if you're not familiar with Padlet. All right. I'm going to give you the link to the uh, evaluation. And in the meantime, so you can start doing the evaluation, but this is also, I'm going to stop sharing, and this is an opportunity for you guys to, oh, what did I just do? Stop sharing, and let me go to the chat. All right, so this is the evaluation link. How do you all feel about this? What do you think, if you're thinking about your learners and online life skills, is there something jumping out at you that you would like to teach, even if these aren't the tools you would do it with?
I think I would use the Google Maps maybe as for a way to maybe put in a review of
I like,
something like if we went somewhere and we
I
liked
love
it or
that.
didn't like it, maybe have them write a review first in class and then try to put it up on Google Maps.
I love that idea. So you could really practice some vocabulary, right? And talk a little bit about being polite or meaningful or informational in your writing. I think that's an amazing idea. And then to have it up on Google if they want to, they can also just submit it to you if they're shy and
Yeah.
they don't want to be online. But that way of thinking through what would you say, what would be helpful is a really, I think that's a great writing assignment. Yes, Anna.
So I think most likely Carlos in the chat is expressing a similar idea. It's just very recently I used a snippet from the Google Maps so the students would practice simply giving the directions and sharing the ways to get around in the community. And also that could be giving verbal reviews like real time in the class, like, hey, I go to this supermarket. Oh, like, oh, I actually prefer another supermarket because it's
Yes,
cleaner, or this one is cheaper, or I can find food from my country. How about the food from your country?
I love that.
So it
And
was
I,
like very, very easy, very intuitive. And they also discovered a few new locations in the neighborhood, and some of them expressed interest in visiting. So that was, I didn't even expect to have that much warm feedback on such a
yeah,
simple task.
yeah, that's fantastic. I love that. And I mean, I was an ESL teacher many years ago, and that we did that a lot, right? To talk about your community and your neighborhood and giving directions and getting directions. It's really important because we often have to do that, and people speak very quickly, and so practicing all of that is really wonderful.
And now it's becoming like a lost skill because everyone relies on Google Maps until it glitches or your battery dies or you don't have
Yes,
network. Then out
yes,
of the blue, you don't know what to do.
yes. You're stuck. I know. We talk about how did we live without these things? I don't know. How did I
Beautiful.
ever get anywhere? I don't.
And I
It's
loved it.
right. Yes. Anybody else? Any thoughts?
Actually, I take my students to Metropolitan Museum as a field trip once a year, and I think
Excellent.
that art and culture is a good, preview before we go. We talk about the art piece, where you want to go, which one you want to see face to face.
I love that. And then coming back, they can go find maybe they saw something because this is an interesting thing, right? When you see art, maybe it's a painting or an image that you've seen before printed, and then you go see it in real life, it can often be a little different than you expect, right? It can be bigger or smaller, and then to come back and be able to look at it again, I think that's a really interesting idea. Anybody else? Any thoughts?
I like the Google art to show compare and contrast. Maybe I could use that, have them get on that and maybe pick an artist and then compare and contrast to a Venn diagram with that. That
Love
I
it.
might be.
Yes, I love that. This idea of critical thinking or being able to express what it is you want to be able to say, those are such important skills that you're already probably working on in your content areas. And now you can bring in these googly tools. And if you're not aware, Padlet in their sandbox, they have a Venn diagram, which you could have as your background, and then, but that's a whole other thing. That's a Padlet workflow.
Okay.
Um, Anybody else, any thoughts or any questions? Maybe you're feeling like, well, yeah, this didn't really hit it for me. I would be really interested in working on XYZ skill, but I don't feel like this is what my folks would like to do. Because maybe we can help you think of some things to do. Yes, Isabel, I see your message in the chat. I've shown this now a couple of times and then promptly forget about it. And I do think it's an amazing resource. Again, we're a little spoiled in New York City, but this gives you international scope, and there's just so many, the history piece. And like I said, they do a nice job of connecting it to other subject areas like science and math. I didn't really take us through that. Um, so there are ways to kind of think about bringing art and culture into maybe content areas that often don't have a lot of that. So you can look at it from that perspective too. So so the things I really want to make sure folks feel like you kind of have a sense of is that there are these skills we need to be online and be safe and get what we want. And so be considering if there are skills in that area that you can bring into the content that you're already working on. And then there are these three, or I guess four specific tools to think about, but they don't have to be those, right? You could do it in a totally different way. Uh, but both of them are important. And the tools that we talked about, you could use. I think you've come up with some really great ideas that are not necessarily connected to the online life piece. Although maybe you can combine. Maybe there's often with the skills like the ones that were listed under online life, they're very explicit, right? Or helpful to be explicit about them, to say, you know, um, do you know, can, if I, okay, everybody find the Metropolitan Museum and map a route there from our school and let's see how long it will take and how different it is if you take the bus or the subway or just to play around with that. So I think there are ways to do it even just as exercise of, but then to say, now you know how to move around, or maybe they do already. Any other questions or thoughts? Yeah, I'm going to stay quiet while I ask you that question. All right. Well, I'm going to stick around, but that was my content for today. What I do have in the slides, let me see here. There's a couple of resources at the end. Um, so again, today I didn't show you this. I should have done this when I was giving you the evaluation survey link. But anyway, this is what this was. Google Club Meeting 6, whatever. We'll figure out whatever you put in there. So apply digital skills lessons. This is something that Google has created. These are online. They're applied lessons. So it would be taking arts and culture and finding a lesson idea, and then it would break down the lesson with that. So if you go to apply digital skills, I don't know if arts and culture will show up. Let's see. And you can browse here before you log in, but then you'll eventually want to make an account. Let's do for educators. Actually, no, sorry. That's for you to learn. We're doing the applied digital skills. So they have celebrate Black history, culture, identity, and here are a variety of activities that you could that include Google tools, not necessarily the ones we talked about today. And they tell you this is a 2-hour one, this is a 45-minute one. Create a community mind map. We were just talking about that. So this is nice in that it takes you, you don't have to share this with learners, or you can, but usually most of the lessons are made up of like short little 1 or 2 minute videos where they tell you something and then you go do it. And then you come back for the next part of the lesson. And you can learn that way and then turn around and use it with your learners, or you can let your learners know this exists and they can learn on their own even. And so that's at the end of our slides today. And then I think I include this every time. Bridges Digital Resilience Toolkit, because our theme is digital resilience, this is kind of a handy support, right? So we looked at the Seattle Digital Equity Initiative Digital Skills Framework today for online life. Bridges is connected to this. They use this framework and they've developed a lot of resources around it. So again, you don't have to be, it doesn't, if it's not online life and you want to use some other, one of the other domains, they have a lot of resources that support all the different buckets. The buckets are, let me just open it up so you see that. As I said, there are 10 different areas, but they overlap. So communication is an area. Creation is an area. Obviously, writing an email could fall in both of those categories. Device ownership, essential foundations, which are kind of the basic skills, but again, you know, is email there? Maybe, maybe not. Information skills, which I think a lot of what we were talking about today with online life, crossover with information, lifelong learning, mobile, which I think for us is like again, they they get into some specifics here, but we all know that most of our learners are using mobile, and I think most of us in life are using our mobile phones more almost than our computers these days. Privacy and security, which was last month's topic, workplace, and then they do a nice job of pulling out some specific skills from all the different domains for education, for example. So you don't, it's a little less than doing everything. So you can see that in our slides. All right. I'm going to give you back 5 minutes. How's that? But I will be sending, so I'll be downloading our recording and I will be putting it up on our blog and on YouTube, and I will be sharing a link with you. If not today, I will be sending it to you tomorrow. And you'll see in the slides you can register for next month if you want to, and there's lots of links in there. But feel free always to reach out to me if you end up with a question or you try to use something and it doesn't work, or you need someone to play with you on it. I'm always very happy to do that kind of stuff. So feel free to reach out to me. My contact information is at the end here, but you also got lots of emails from me about today. All right. Well, have a fantastic rest of the day. Very good to see you. Look forward to seeing at least some of you maybe in March.
Thank you. Stay well and blessed.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank
You're welcome.
you.
See you next time.
See you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.